Hi, I'm Matt, a husband, father, Army veteran, and prepper. Over the past few years, I've realized just how important preparedness has become. I believe it is more important now than ever before. As more and more global challenges, obstacles, and disasters present themselves, I realize that our own safety and security can no longer rest in the hands of others, but it is and always has been our responsibility. With over 2+ years of the pandemic, we've already been experiencing global supply chain issues, high inflation across the board, and food insecurity. The pandemic has also ushered in the Great Resignation and abnormally high unemployment numbers. For many people, their lives have been forever affected by the pandemic in one way or another. For some, their standard of living has decreased significantly, and a percentage of those people have slidden further down the socioeconomic ladder. Sadly, with what is currently going on with inflation, the war in Ukraine, and several other factors, such as the collapsing U.S. dollar, many of those people will slide even further into poverty. Times are changing, and they're changing very rapidly. The signs are all around us. We just need to make sure that we can see them clearly and prepare for what's coming up ahead. Now look at all the strange weather phenomena happening right here in the United States. Not to mention all those that are happening around the world. All of the natural disasters, such as tornadoes, mudslides, volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, mass animal die-offs, climate changes, massive wildfires, and the list goes on and on. If we also notice closely, we can see the civil unrest and food riots that are going on around the world. Just take a look at Peru and how quickly that situation went into disaster mode. Now, don't think for one moment, folks, that this could not happen here in the U.S. If anything, we need to look at Peru as a barometer of what can happen here to us. So pay attention and get prepared.
Protesters clashed with riot police in several cities around the country, burning tires, looting, blocking highways. The rising cost of living is affecting many Peruvians. Rocketing fuel prices have directly impacted the basic food basket. People are blaming it on President Pedro Castillo's policies.
We have supported him, and how is he paying us back? He's raising the price of sugar, flour. When has it been like this? Our children are hungry, there is no work, and we want a solution.
Farmers blocked the Pan American Highway to protest against the threefold increase in fertilizer prices. The government says fertilizers, fuel and grains imports from Russia and Ukraine have shot up because of the war. Last week, Castillo angered protesters, saying they were being paid to protest. Farmers and truckers responded by blocking the crucial Central Highway, which is the main food supply line for the capital. That in turn caused food shortages.
The president has forgotten the poor people. Everything is expensive. He should put on his pants and govern well. If not, he should go back to his hometown.
As more and more people begin to notice the severity of the global supply chain crisis, and as they see just how much inflation is going to limit their purchasing power, the already empty grocery store shelves are going to become more and more bare. A few years ago, I can remember those in the prepper community were looked at as being crazy or foolish. Some people even ask, "What are you doing? Are you preparing for the end of the world?" But as more and more people wake up to the ongoing worldwide crises and the inevitable global reset and the food shortages, they realize that they should have been preparing this whole time. Now, if we take a look at all these issues, we're talking world wars, food shortages, pestilences and pandemics, climate change issues, natural disasters, and all those combined we're facing right now. But even one of those would be more than you and I could solve. But one thing that we can do is get prepared. And we need to prepare now. Now you see, the powers that be that run this world, I'm talking about world governments, the so-called elites, world bankers, secret societies. Here in America, I'm talking about our very own politicians, our leaders, and the Federal Reserve. They've all known about these issues for decades. And some may say that they've even planned this all from the beginning. Now, you may ask me, what plan? Well, let's just look at where things are heading and exactly how we ended up on this collision course of economic collapse and food insecurity, rumors of war, world wars, and it's looking like a one world government. Now, let's take a look at the Bible for just a moment to see how all these things come into play. Now, we know that the Bible specifically speaks of a one world government and a one world currency, and that system is called the beast system. Now, recently, folks, President Biden announced the idea of a new national digital currency. Most people probably aren't even aware of that. They're also unaware that the fact that the US dollar is on the verge of collapse. The dollar is only worth 3% of what it used to be worth. Since the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, the US dollar has seen its purchasing power decrease to almost nothing. The US dollar has lost over 97% of its value, or what you may refer to its purchasing power. Now, as you all know, we've all seen our dollar stretch further and further, seen it get thinner and thinner as far as what we can purchase over the years. At one time, all U.S. currency was either backed by gold or silver. Now, President Roosevelt took the U.S. off the gold standard in 1933, and President Nixon officially closed it, reopening from 1971 through 73. So why did America abandon the gold standard? Well, according to official government reports, this was done to curb inflation and prevent foreign nations from redeeming U.S. dollars for gold. But as we can see, it was meant to curb inflation. But inflation has steadily risen year after year since 1913. This has done the exact opposite of curbing inflation. It's actually exacerbated the situation. You see, back in 1913, when the Federal Reserve was created, $100 was the equivalent to over $2,800 of today's money. Also back then, one single dollar bill was equivalent to almost $22. Now, in 1933, which was the final year that the U.S. was on the gold standard, the inflation rate was actually negative. It was at a negative 5.11%. So that meant that our dollar was so far ahead of other world currencies and so far ahead of the price indexes that we actually had a surplus. Our money was worth that much. But since then, folks, that short time from 1913 all the way till now, we've seen a 2,000% increase in inflation. Now, last year in 2021, inflation was up about another 7% or so. But to think that it's cumulatively risen to over 2,000%. Now, everyone can feel the effects of inflation. We all feel it every time we go to the grocery store, or every time we open up our wallets or pocketbooks, or every time we pump gas or pay our electric bill. And now, every time we make an everyday consumer purchase, we can see the effects of inflation. Now, unfortunately, these prices are not going to get better. Now, let's look at what's happening around the world. Just look at what's happening in your own city or your own small town where you live. Now let's take a look at an example and see how inflation is killing the dollar. Imagine that you just received an inheritance of $20,000. So you go ahead and put that new money into the bank, and you've been banking with this bank for some time now, and you're pretty familiar with how interest works, and so you feel confident, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this money in the bank. However, the bank has a new policy that you're unaware of. Now that bank's actually going to charge you interest for keeping your money. So after the first month, they send you a letter stating that the bank's going to charge you 12% interest for storing your money. So you're a little disappointed, and you call the bank up, and then they explain to you, sir, well, it's not just our bank, it's the new policy for all banks. So you're a little disappointed and a little upset, but you know there's nothing you can do, so you go ahead and just keep your money in the bank. Well, guess what? Year after year of the bank charging you interest, that little bit of 12% that you didn't think much of, well, guess what? Now that's ballooned to over 2,000% that you owe the bank. So now your $20,000 has went down to zero. And now you owe the bank $400,000. That is crazy. But guess what? That's exactly as what's happening to the US dollar. It only has 3% left of its purchasing power. It's lost over 97% of its value. And it's not going to get any better, folks. So to sum this inflation thing up, paper money has not curbed inflation. We were on a much better level when our money was actually backed by gold, when it was actually worth something. And see, now we just print money out of thin air. When they want to pay for something, they just print more money. Now, you don't have to be an economic expert, okay, to understand these things. You don't have to have a real sound financial understanding. But one thing I do know that you do need, if you've seen the news, you always keep hearing about the debt ceiling, right? Raise the debt ceiling. Well, folks, that's all they're doing is printing money. Printing paper money that's not backed by anything. And other countries are figuring this out, and they're moving away from the US dollar. And unfortunately, that's going to hurt us here in America. Let's look at the beast system again for a moment. Now, whether you believe in that or not, ladies and gentlemen, that is where we are heading. And we're heading there faster than most realize. Now, as we've been distracted here in America by Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, the latest sports game, or the newest viral TikTok video, leaders around the world met in Dubai for the World Government Summit. And there, they were discussing our future as Americans, as well as the future of citizens around the world. They were there discussing policies and presenting a future that many of us may not recognize. They also admitted as much that America is no longer the top dog. They also admitted as much that America is no longer able to lead the world effectively. You see, these leaders around the world, they know that America is on the verge of collapse. Now, us as everyday Americans, if we really look, we can see the signs. We can see what's going on around us, but we never would have thought that it has gotten this bad or gone this far this fast. But again, these other leaders, they know this. They recognize this. So now it's time for us to recognize this and understand this so we can prepare and do the things that we need to do to put ourselves and our families in the best position going forward. Now, America has been dominant for well over the last 50 years. Militarily, economically, but unfortunately that time is coming to an end. Now, America had the oil market cornered for years. Whether you bought oil from us here in America, from Saudi Arabia, from Russia, from Iran, from Nigeria, or any other oil producing country, you had to pay for that oil in US dollars. But with the current conflict or war going on in Ukraine, Russia has moved away from the US dollar. Now, if you need to purchase Russian oil or goods, you have to purchase it in Russian rubles. And there's many, many European nations that rely heavily upon Russian oil. They have some decisions to make. And unfortunately, those decisions are going to affect you here at home. Do they continue to stand by NATO and America? Or are they going to find a new way to power their homes and businesses and industries? Or are they going to go and continue to buy oil from Russia? Well, if they do, they have to dump the US dollar. And many countries around the world have already dumped the US dollar. And there's going to be many, many more that's going to be dumping it here in the future. And that's going to bring a massive devaluation to our already struggling U.S. economy when that happens. Now, Russia, China, Iran, and India, they're already making alliances with one another. They're already brokering deals that's going to strengthen their economies both collectively and individually. Sadly, that's going to hurt our economy even more. Now, with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, they account for about roughly 30% of the world's wheat exports. And there's many, many nations that rely heavily upon that wheat. As you can see from lesser developed nations like Peru, they're already breaking out in riots and chaos and fighting simply because they cannot afford to eat. This will spill over here into America, folks. It may not be on that level, but it is going to spill here on our shores. We will feel the effects from all that's going on at one time. It is like it is a perfect storm that's brewing. And again, some may even say all these things were planned. Now, Russia also produces a huge portion of the world's fertilizers. Now, here in America, our farmers are getting ready for their spring planting season, and they're going through a fertilizer shortage. And if they are able to find the fertilizer, they're having to pay a hefty, hefty price just so they can be able to plant their crops for this year. Now, there's one of two things that's going to happen with this scenario. They're either going to not be able to purchase the fertilizer that they need, thus that's going to equal less crop production, and thus continue to contribute to the food shortages that we've been experiencing. Secondly, if they are able to get the fertilizer that they need, they're going to pass that cost on to the store. Then the store is going to pass that cost on to us, you and I, the consumers. So prices are about to go up, folks. Most experts in the grocery industry are talking at least a 30 to 40% increase. Some say that that's very conservative, that it may topple 50+% of food price increases by the end of the summer. Now, we have to look ahead and prepare for what's coming. If you buy a can of beans today that cost you 68 cents, but by the end of the summer, if that same can of beans cost you $1.98, you're buying food and putting it away for your family now that you're going to eat later. But you're saving money in the process because you know that it's going to get more and more expensive. So it's a win-win situation. We have to start preparing now. We have to be able to see what's coming ahead and prepare. Now, if we tie all this together, I want to make one thing clear. I'm not saying that the US dollar is going to collapse tomorrow. I'm not saying it's going to collapse next week or even next year. But what I am saying is that it is going to collapse. That is a fact. And the sooner that you realize this, the better off that you're going to be, the better off that your family is going to be. Now, if we recap as well, we know that the dollar has lost over 97% of its purchasing power. That is an undeniable fact. We all know that our dollar does not go nearly as far as it used to. And with all these situations brewing like the perfect storm, our dollar is going to decrease and decrease here in the weeks, months, and years ahead. Now, I can see the train coming down the tracks, and it's speeding along, and it's almost at the end of the track. And I hope that you can see it as well, so you can start preparing for what you and your family need to do. Now, let's go back to the Bible for just a moment as it speaks of this beast system, this one world system. In order for that to come about, all other systems must be bankrupt, or they must be destroyed. They must be taken out of the way to usher in this new system that everyone looks to, that everyone has to be a part of, because the old way is broken. Now, that is going to happen when the dollar collapses. Now, if you've traveled around the world, and let's say you've been to a lesser developed country, and their particular currency, we'll just take Mexico for example. I'm not sure the exact exchange rate right now, but I do know, as well as you know, it takes so many pesos to equal a dollar. Or let's say if you were in Afghanistan, it takes so many Afghanis to equal a dollar. Well, folks, when the dollar collapses, that's exactly what's going to happen here. Our money is going to be worth less and less. It's going to take so many of our dollars just to equal what used to be $1. So you're going to have twice, or who knows how much more money just to equal the money that it used to be worth. So our dollar will effectively become the peso or the Afghani. And this is also going to happen around the world to other currencies in order to bring about this one world system. And this one world system is going to be digital, folks. You're going to be using the digital dollar just like Biden announced. And again, all purchases are going to be tracked and traced and recorded. There's no way around it. Now, depending on how far this thing goes, or how far the powers that be let this go on, we may be in for a severe standard of living decrease. Now, I know that's hard to understand here in America, but that is the way that things are looking. Once the dollar collapses, many of us could be priced out of the market for goods and services. Imagine gasoline prices costing 30% of your income. Imagine food or groceries costing another 30 to 40% of your income. Imagine heating and cooling your home costing another 10 to 20%. Americans already spend 10 to 15% of their income on food. And unfortunately, there's already slightly more than 10% of Americans living below the poverty line. Tragically, when the dollar collapses, those living below the poverty line are going to experience famine right here in America. And for most Americans, they're now going to fall below the poverty line. Now, I know that's hard to understand, but once the money is devalued so much, it's going to take so much of your money just to purchase the simple everyday items that you used to take for granted. The upcoming dollar collapse, or the Great Reset, whatever you want to call it, it's going to create two classes of people. It's going to create the poor and the rich. There's going to be no in between anymore. Now, the rich will still be able to purchase goods simply because ultimately they'll have more money. Their money will be able to last much longer than mine or yours will. But again, that's if the dollar doesn't totally collapse. Now, if the dollar totally collapses, our money could be worth nothing. So you may ask yourself, what does this all mean? Well, let me tell you. Now's the time to get prepared. Now's the time to take action. You can no longer just look away and think that the problem is just going to disappear. You can't just pull the cover over your head and go back to sleep. Now, I'm not saying that these things are going to happen tomorrow, but I do believe they are going to happen very soon. Just as world leaders around the world are already realizing that fact. Now, soon is a word that means different things to different people. But if I were you, I would start preparing as soon as possible. And that's why I wanted to make this video. because I do understand there's so many people out there that just don't know what's going on. They just think that America, they're going to ride this American dream forever. But unfortunately, it is coming to an end. Now, you need to learn how to grow your own food. You need to learn how to plant a garden in your front yard or your backyard or your side yard. You need to learn how to preserve and store your food for long-term storage, such as canning. You need to learn how to raise animals and livestock. Raise some chickens, some quail. You know, if you have a larger yard, you can look into some sheep or goats. But it's urgent that you can do what you can do now and do what you can afford. And you need to get on that ASAP. You know, not just with all these things I've been talking about. I mean, even if there was an earthquake in your city that wiped out your city, whatever city or town that you live in, boom, a massive earthquake hit. And it knocked out the power and swallowed buildings and homes into the ground. Water, no water, no electricity, no sewer. Would you be prepared for that? We're so used to living, I'll just say it, high on the hog here in America. But other countries, they are much more equipped to deal with things if things ever go back to a primitive level. And unfortunately, here in America, I just don't think that we are. But you need to learn how to cook without electricity. Do you know how to start a fire? Do you know how to cook on an open fire? Do you know how to purify water if your municipal water is broken down or simply you just can't afford to pay the bill anymore? Do you know how to do those things? Learn anything and everything that's going to get you prepared for what's coming. Introduce yourself to new skills and trades. Do as much research and learn as much as you can. Again, I'm not asking anyone to go into debt, but you need to start preparing and buying extra food and water and having a plan. And like I said earlier, even at the simplest form, you're saving money now. If you buy a can of beans today and you look in 3 months and see what the price is, you've saved money. So at the very least, you need to prepare yourself and your family for what's coming ahead. Now, sadly, there's going to be some that will watch this video and they're still going to act like nothing strange is happening in the world around them. They will simply go back to sleep and plug back into the matrix. They will ignore all the weather events, all the civil unrest, all the wars and the rumors of wars, all the pestilences and pandemics, the hyperinflation, and so on and so forth. But for those of you who are not asleep, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Please, I urge you to start preparing now. I cannot say that enough. Now again, don't go broke by doing it. Just start putting away food and water and start learning some valuable skills that can help you and your family when tough times come about. Now, I hope that this video was helpful to you. Please share this video, please like this video, and please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on future videos just like this one here. With that being said, everyone, thank you for watching and be blessed.